Hello everyone and welcome to the Land Rover Design Studio. My name is Massimo Frascella, I'm Creative Director here at Land Rover. And we're here today to take you through this amazing journey that has been designing the new Defender. Before we do that, let me introduce some of the team that is here with us today, starting with Jeremy Waterman, Chief Designer Exterior, Amy Frascella, a little bit at the back, Director of Color and Materials, Sean Henstridge, Chief Designer Special Vehicles, Martin Buffery, Chief Designer Interior, Nick Finney, Design Manager Interior, and Nicola Tanks as a Senior Lead Designer Color and Material. So this is a good part of the team that's been working on the Defender. Before we start the journey on the new Defender, let me just remind you about our brand. Land Rover is the master brand, and within the master brand we have three families of vehicles: Range Rover, Discovery and Defender. And design is what really connects the three families together. As you can see, design and engineering integrities are prerequisite for these three vehicles. Leadership in design, leadership in engineering is really at the top. And then we dial some of the values like refinement and luxury for Range Rover, versatility for Discovery, and durability, as we see, for Defender. And this design and engineering integrity is really a unique and compelling combination. It's truly what sets Land Rover apart from everyone else. As well as a brand strategy, we follow a very established and considered design strategy, which is based on four key elements: modernity, relevance, sustainability, and desirability. Desirability, last but not least, is quite possibly the most important element, and it's what really has changed the way we do business. And if in the past people would approach our brand just purely from a functional point of view, now we see people that just want to buy a Land Rover because they just love it. There is a very strong emotional connection with them. But we're here to talk about Defender today, and Defender has been a fantastic journey. As you can imagine, it's the vehicle that really created the Land Rover, and it's the vehicle that today anchors the whole strategy that I've just showed you. It's a vehicle that hasn't evolved for 70 years. It's what we call the last automotive icon, and we stretch it as far as saying, it's such a simple shape that even a child could draw, but in reality that's not really the case. You can only imagine the sort of pressure and the importance of this program for us. But the briefing was very clear what we wanted to do. We didn't want to look too much at Defender as the heritage and looking back. We just wanted to capture the essence, that spirit, what Defender has represented throughout the world for these 70 years, and really capture that essence in a modern day Defender. So the briefing was very, very, very clear for us.
There has been so many stories and challenges delivering the Defender that it's very difficult to choose only one.
On my first day I got told I was going to be working on the Defender. How much effort goes in to get from the concept to production, and how we realised that in the Defender is such a great thing to be able to see.
One of the proudest moments, definitely seeing the concept car of Defender being unveiled at the Tokyo World Cup final, seeing it illuminated, seeing all the details shining as it came onto a pitch to deliver the trophy.
One of my favourite parts was working with the design model shop, ensuring that each colour and finish was like the chosen material.
So having lived in an old Defender for 3 weeks whilst travelling Scandinavia, I really felt the sense of responsibility with this new car, and I feel we've really delivered a fit-for-purpose vehicle.
We had to look at it in microscopic detail to work out the structure of the grain that would give us the most durable and robust flooring.
proudest moment was seeing the model arrive in the studio and seeing everyone's excitement of what we had been working on come to reality.
The most amazing moment for me was even knowing the product inside out to realize its true driving potential.
From a modelling point of view, the Defender was quite a challenge. When they rolled the internal concept car through the doors in the studio, it was really satisfying to see what a good job the team had done.
After working on it in the studio for so long, it's great to be able to share it. So definitely seeing the car on the road for the first time was a great feeling.
How's that?
And this is the beginning, a side view, a very simple side view, pen on paper, an old-fashioned way of sketching in these days, but it's still very valid. And I think that sketch already is capturing the essence of Defender. Do you remember that?
Yes, I remember that followed a couple of weeks of immersion, locked ourselves away, headphones, to really sort of forget about the old Defender and really focus on what this new car could be.
Yeah, because the old Defender is such an established car that somehow it would have it would have come back, and we didn't want to do like a retro.
No. So lots more sketching, frantic sketching, 2 or 3 weeks, and then we decided to quickly get into scale models.
Yeah, just a few scale.
4 or 5, I think it was.
Yeah, 4 or 5, just for a couple of weeks. Not longer than that.
And then quickly, one was kind of hitting the sweet spot, wasn't it? So we decided to go full size.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, we kind of got to the answer fairly quickly. I remember there was a senior review coming. We had the chairman and Mr. Tata coming.
Tata, we got that model ready, did a lot of work on it full size, refined it and painted it for that review. And I remember we walked out an hour before, didn't we?
Oh, that was a bit of a scary moment. So you guys imagine, you're presenting at the highest level within the business, a vision for the next generation Defender after 70 years, and then you look at it and you go like, that front end,
not right,
it's just not right.
But that's the process, isn't it? It's iterative. Yeah. So the side view I think we were pretty happy with, but the front we weren't happy with. So an hour before we got the tapes out,
on the floor,
with our knees on the dirt, and we retaped the whole graphics of the front end.
Yeah, I mean, when you think about it now, it's actually a pretty cool story.
Pretty cool. And that had a nickname, didn't it, that car to us?
Yeah, famous Eagle Eye.
Called it the Eagle Eye because it had quite aggressive front end lamps with chamfers on the corner, but it did, ultimately lead to the face that we have now. Yeah,
and then we developed the model further. I remember a few reviews outside after that senior review, and it got us to having a vision for the 90 and the 110.
Do you remember the comment when we painted that first 110 model?
Yeah, that was pretty special. I remember, it was just a very short sentence. You finally got it.
Got it.
This is the new Defender, and I think that was really the beginning.
That was the beginning of the new Defender. And like you said, then we went to 2 other models, a 90 and a 110. And it's safe to say having that 90 model really helped the business case for that car and the Defender family. Yeah,
which shows how powerful or influential design can be. It definitely is in our business. Just being able to push a concept through.
Having a full size vision and a really a painted model which looks real can really sort of influence the business.
In fact, we got to creating our design vision in the form of what we call LR1, Land Rover 1, which is the car that you see next to us today. The LR1 is actually a true prototype. You know, we took a Range Rover Sport, we modified the chassis just to have a full running vehicle. The body is aluminium. You remember? It's all hand formed.
Probably
like a proper coach builder.
Probably the best built show car we've ever done in Land Rover.
And it's the design statement, it's the design vision that we presented to the business, and it's the car that got really everyone behind, across all function of the business. And that's the reason why we were able to capture so closely with the final production car the initial concept. You can see the starting proportion, very short in the front, short in the rear, upright, front end, is typical. It needs to be there to give that presence and sense of confidence. The sliced back end, which is sliced, but there's a lot of refinement and consideration. The curvature on that back is quite incredible, isn't it?
Yeah, in both directions, lots of accelerating plan shape.
Because it's easy to just chop something, but it looks crude. Yeah. And I invite you guys, whenever you can, look at the form on the plan view of this vehicle. It's amazing, and the challenge on delivering this incredibly pure and simple body side, this strong shoulder and wheel arches, and that was a piece of work to retain every single section.
We used to say plus or minus a millimetre anywhere on the car, kind of.
Yeah, even
didn't capture it, so very critical.
Yeah, I remember when we look at the clay, we'll see that there's been a lot of going back and forth and remilling until we really capture every single nuance of the section. And then the square, which is the designer's favorite. We love the square. It's there because it balances the proportion of the glass versus the body. It gives that sense of solidity. And with the final production car, we even managed to give a function to it with some storage.
Yeah. We touched on it earlier, the eagle-eye front end, now with the final design to the front end, very geometrical, very purposeful, but very Defender. That probably was one of the areas that took the most amount of design work.
Oh, absolutely. Particularly when you work with the round elements for the eyes, it's so easy to, just a slight variation on the angle. You can make it look really happy or really very sleepy or too aggressive. So, to get that right balance, because Defender, is quite neutral but very reassuring.
Yeah, that took a lot of development time. One of our favourite design elements is the front headlamp of this car, the detail in it, the dual light quality, but interestingly you'll see there's no traditional lens on the front of this lamp, but there's an interesting story about how that happened on the rear lamps, Massimo.
Yeah, it's quite funny in a way because, again, we had a design review, and I think what happened is that two left lenses showed up instead of a left-hand side and a right-hand side. So last minute we had to make a call. We just couldn't go with one lens and the other one without. And then we thought, well, the headlamp itself is exposed, so we just left it exposed. And the more we looked at it, the more we thought, that's the right thing to do. And that's how the design of the tail lamp came about. Another really important message of the LR1 concept is the satin finish on the body. Nicola, can you tell us more about it?
Yes, so since the beginning of Defender, on all of the models, we've always shown a satin finish. And that's tied into the modernity of the models and the story behind Defender, how we want it to look industrial and kind of tough and rough. So we produced and designed and paint with very fine aluminium flakes in it, but then complemented it with this satin finish to talk back to that industrial feeling of the vehicle.
Yeah. And that's something that we always showed in all our models.
Yeah.
It was very important for us.
And then, because we've got that industrial feel to the car, we've also got a lot of other metals on the exterior and on the interior as well of the vehicle. So we had an opportunity to look at and study all those different technical metal coatings. So we looked at things like anodizing, we looked at tinted lacquers, but I think the most fit for purpose coating that we found was powder coating. And you can see that on these beautiful skid pans, on the bonnet louvers, on the cladding, but then also we've rolled that into the interior of the vehicle so that everything ties together.
The interior of the LR1 is just as amazing. The story of the interior of the LR1 is just as amazing as the exterior, and it really delivers the same message of modernity and durability, and at the same time with a high level of sophistication. Nick, can you tell us more about it?
Sure. Hi, welcome to the interior of LR1, and this is really the essence, if you like, of Defender interior design. The centerpiece of the interior is this fantastic aluminium structure, a single aluminium crosscar beam milled out of one billet of aluminium, solid billet. And on this part, we chose to keep the visible milling lines, if you can see here on the IP, because we just loved the feeling of authenticity that this gave the interior design. The structure of this IP is so strong that it's able to hold the shifter high up on the IP, which allows us to have a centre seat, which is a really nice nod to the early Land Rovers. On the door, lots of exposed metal, lots of exposed body in white, but treated with the same delicacy and finesse as the exterior surfaces. And the door panel itself is bolted on with just visible, beautiful fixings, a really honest design language. Everywhere you look in this interior, it's filled with really new and exciting materials that seem extremely appropriate to Land Rover. And I'd like to pass you now over to Nicola, who will tell us a bit more about that.
So within our teams, we always look at the key material attributes in order to make a decision. And we took the opportunity for LR1 to look at a non-leather interior, and it opened up an opportunity and a new world of materials for us to explore. So, for example, we looked at using PU because it's lightweight and it's white clean, which is absolutely suitable for a Defender. We looked at antimicrobial textiles so they could clean themselves. But we also had a little bit of fun, so we also created a Defender scent that was embedded, which is pretty unique. But we also look at the technical attributes and technical materials. So for the washout floor, we designed and created a really durable grain, which meant that the floor could be washed out and rough and ready. And then we also touched every single detail within the branded goods segment. So you can see smaller details where you've got the emblem of the exterior outline laser etched into the zip pulls.
Thank you, Nicola and Nick. So this kind of concludes the story of LR1, which is the first part of designing the new Defender. So it was creating the design vision. So this is the design statement. And as we said, this was very crucial in bringing the whole business behind it, and it really served that purpose. I think every function was so excited about delivering the LR1 that every effort was made by everyone collectively in order to stay as close as possible. And what you see here, this is one of the final feast clays that we made.
This is the final feast clay, where you put all of the feasible glass drops, bumper beams, all the sections in. But it really is a testament how close this car is to the LR1 concept. We still make cars and design cars in clay because we think it really is the best medium for working and refining surfaces. And what you see here, a section, we use something called Dye-Knocker film, where it's like painting the car. You can paint that in any colour you like, and it's just a great way of reviewing the clay, dressing the clay we call it, and making it look like a real car.
Yeah, that's very good to evaluate in sections. And again, you just mentioned it, clay. You just can't replace clay when it comes to refinement in section. And we talked about how many times we rework this section, with all the pedestrian regulation in order to retain that level refinement. And again, there's only one way that you can do that, is just by touching the surface and working in clay. Incidentally, this vehicle is already showing the smaller wheels and the smaller wheels, which is on the steel 18 wheel.
And that's an interesting story, isn't it? Because normally designers would never pick the smallest wheel on a car. You always go for the largest wheel. But when we asked a lot of the designers who worked on the car, a lot of them would have liked the steel wheel because it really captures that essence of Defender.
Yeah, and then we have, as a next step, this is what we call aesthetic confirmation model. It's basically a design freeze. Yeah. It's basically the car that has all the appropriate level of feasibility. It's the first time that we marry the exterior to the interior. In other words, this is the final car. Yeah. Is what you see is what you will eventually get.
It's the first time we can actually judge and see what we've got interior, exterior, as Massimo said. And we built this all in-house, didn't we? And it's a drivable model, and it's great for reviews and seeing how the car actually will look.
And again, smaller wheel and the satin finish, which has been a consistent story throughout the whole journey. And this is the final production vehicle in the form of the 110. As you can appreciate, volume and proportion still very optimized, just like the 90. And again, it's beautiful, level of details. If you see headlamp all the way down to the headlamps, the grille, the perforation, it's really hard to, almost spot the difference with the original concept. And then again, consistent throughout the whole messaging, this beautiful satin finish on the vehicle.
And this is actually your car, Massimo, isn't it?
This just happens to be
your car.
My car, yes.
But it shows
specially wrapped.
The designer's choice, how Massimo specified his car.
Amy.
Hello.
Hello. So, what's the story with the wrap?
So, we've talked about satin being incredibly important for visualizing the character of the architecture all along the process. And within our team, we also recognize that materials have attributes. And obviously, as we were developing material technologies for Defender, dialing up those attributes to be fit for purpose was even more important. So what is Defender's version of a satin finish? That basically took light in the form of this performance wrap. So the wrap is really unique. This wrap has a lot of interesting attributes that would be very relevant for how people will be using Defender. It has a level of scratch recovery, which means light scratches that you might get from bushes, etc. Simply leaving the vehicle out in the sun will self-heal. Also, the wrap is placed over a pre-painted car. So it means that if you have to repair one of the panels, you can strip the templated wrap area off. So it's much faster, efficient, and easy to repair than a traditional paint finish. It also is more sustainable than a traditional paint finish in terms of what I just explained with the repair.
It just feels like it's really
it was really made for Defender. And we were industry first to deliver this technology as a full body OEM fitment on Defender, so we're really proud of that. And every single templated piece on the architecture has been crafted. I remember even the cars being in the studio, Post-it notes all over the place, like just checking every single line and how that wrap was going to go on each and every single panel. So this is how we've delivered satin finish on Defender.
Cool. This kind of completes the exterior design story of the new Defender, and we're going to move to interior. We'll be talking to Nick again after the other one.
Thanks, Massimo. Thank you. So what a fantastic opportunity to design the interior of the new Defender. And before we look at the models that we've got in the studio, I'd like to take you through a quick design presentation that gives you a flavour of what that design process was. So the challenge that the interior design team faced was twofold, really. The first one was that we needed to find a starting point aesthetically. It basically meant starting from scratch. And secondly, we knew right from the start that we weren't designing just one vehicle, we were designing a family with various seating options, load lengths, and really that encouraged us to look at a modular approach that allowed the customer to basically design the vehicle that they needed. So where did we start? We looked at the heritage of Land Rover, which is very rich, and we went right back to the start, to these initial Land Rover interiors. And what we particularly loved about them was just how honest they are. There's a real honesty in the materials that are presented, and also the structure of the vehicle it's built around. And we felt that this could be actually a really cool starting point for the design of the Defender for the 21st century. Now, clearly, interiors are far more complicated than this now, with lots more components. But we knew that the idea of exposing maybe what was underneath the A surface could be a very interesting starting point for us. And the image here of a motorcycle frame was really inspiring for us because it showed that you could do something which was extremely practical but also beautiful. So our first sketches really were quite raw in many ways, really working out how much structure we could expose and how little we needed to cover it up. And these first images show a crosscar beam that's very rigid, just simple welded sections. But actually, as we went forward, we realised that we could utilise the method that all Land Rovers use at the moment for their crosscar beams, and that's a cast magnesium alloy structure. And this gave us the confidence that we could do something that was actually looked very technical, but more importantly, gave us a much more simplified aesthetic, which is very much part of Land Rover's DNA. Now, clearly, it was a big ask for us to start exposing these structures and these materials when normally they get covered up. So we needed to ensure that we worked hand in hand with our engineering teams in order that they could help us on this journey. And one of the ways we did that was to create our own little internal animation. And this animation was never meant to be shown to the general public, but it was a visual aid for us to really illustrate, if you like, the thought process that was going into the new Defender interior. So here we can see a basic structure, basic floor pan and IP structure with the crosscar beam that's being coated for the A surface. We were never going to use orange, but it's just there for reasons of clarity. And then the components that make up the interior plug into that frame. Now, this is very, very early in the design process. The design is a long way from being finished and very far from being refined for production. But it got greeted with such enthusiasm that we knew we really had a great foothold to start with. So we continued our sketching safe in the knowledge that the engineering team were going to support this way of thinking. And as you can see, as the sketches developed, they became much more sophisticated and much closer to the Defender that we now have on the road today. But I think you can still see that even though the surfaces are sophisticated and the materials are very technical, there's very much a link back to those original Land Rovers. And it wasn't just the IP that we looked at the door and how that's constructed. And in a few moments, Martin's going to tell you exactly how we achieved this design. Again, it's totally unique and very, very Land Rover in its thinking. As the design scheme progressed, the sketches therefore needed to become more detailed, and all of the designers needed to understand how the components fitted together. Now, in the interior team, we do the same as the exteriors. We work in a combination of clay and digital, and these were effectively our final digital surfaces before sign-off, showing the IP of the 110 and the 90. And also focusing in on the details that we felt were important. And these are full data sets for the 90 and 110, showing the 6-seater and the 7-seater. And from that data, we build our ACM model. which is what we have in the studio. And this is the model here in the studio. We actually made 3 ACMs. We made this one, which is the 7-seater 110. We made an inside-outside model of the 6-seater 90, which has the centre jump seat. Fantastic option, which is one of my favourite parts of the car, a great little nod to the original Land Rovers and something that we fought really hard to get into production. And the other model was a 5-seater 110. So this is effectively at the stage of the programme where the design is signed off, ready for production. So pretty much what you see here is what you get. There are a few changes on the production vehicle, but this is more or less it. And there it shows off, I think, to really great effect, the cross-car beam that we had right from the first sketches into production. And I think my favourite bit of the interior is this IP grab handle. It's a beautiful bit of design. It's a wonderful piece of magnesium casting. It's extremely rigid, and it's the first thing that the customer sees when they open the door of the car. Not only that, but if they choose to use it to pull themselves into the car, they'll realise just how strong that is. That's bolted straight back to the structure of the car. And it just gives a touch point, a nice indication of how tough this car actually is. So obviously using materials like magnesium castings is something we don't normally use on interiors. Things like the sweep out floor were unique as well. And this presented an awful lot of challenges to ourselves and the colour materials team. I think the mag beam was probably the biggest challenge for us, wasn't it, Amy?
Yes. Thinking about the honest surfaces and, fit for purpose requirements for all the coating systems, even back to LR1, exploring things like powder coating, how to do that in a way that was ready for Class A surfaces, because powder coating is a very technical coating system that we would typically, in previous mass production vehicles, use under the bonnet. In this instance on Defender, we were exposing structure, so we needed to protect it from heat, also soiling, all the ways that customers will be interfacing with these components. So this is what I'm holding as a piece of raw die-cast magnesium. And these are samples that literally come from production of showing the different powder coat colors that we designed and developed. So the white is quite a statement across all those components. In the interior, we liken in design to say that the white is more like a product design feel, whereas the light gray and the dark, these are a little bit more forgiving for soiling. But even though we do have the white has been tested. So not only protection from heat, tactility was really important when we were working on this coating systems, because it needed to have the right amount of texture for grip, but also needed to be comfortable to touch and hold, because these metal components are on the steering wheel, on the door, and also, as Nick was mentioning, on the magnesium part of the instrument panel, and one of those also is still a handle. So comfort, tactility, color, thinking about soiling and everyday use was really important, developing these systems, and good enough for Class A surfaces rather than just some traditional technical finishes that you might see orange peel under the bonnet. So powder coating was just one of those challenges that we worked on for interior components for Defender. There were lots of other challenges of exposing things that don't normally get exposed. So I'm going to hand over to Martin to talk about the module plate being one of those.
So look, one of the coolest parts of the whole Defender interior for me is actually the door casings. And the reason it's the coolest bit is there is no door casing. So because our philosophy on the car is to celebrate the engineering and the construction of the car, we didn't want to hide that with a door casing that hid all of those parts. So what that means is, from my point of view, the challenge I have is that I have to get involved with the design of the structural parts of the door, and that's not something we normally do. So to give you a couple of examples, first of all, you can see that the door is surrounded by a metal panel. That's, in the real production car, that is actually a metal pressing. It's part of the metal structure of the car. And what we had to do here was talk to the teams required to develop their technical aspects, but at the same time, make sure we treat it as an A-class part. So it's a bit like the body side on the exterior. We have to highlight it, we have to make sure there's enough lead-in on the radii and the fillets, and make sure basically the part's as beautiful as possible. Second example is something I think that's probably an industry first, actually, is that we're going to highlight in this car the module plate. Now, if you've got a modern car, you've got a module plate in your door casing, but you just won't know about it. It's completely hidden within the door structure, and it's not really a celebrated part in any way, shape, or form at all. It's just there to hold a few components in position and make sure that the door performs technically. So that was going to be exposed with our philosophy, so we had to contact the engineering team required. They ignored our emails for a while and our phone calls because they didn't understand why the design team was talking to them. But once we showed them the interior and showed them that their part was going to be front and centre and celebrated, that changed their attitude immediately, and they understood the importance of the A-surface appearance of their part. So first we have to do all the surfacing I've just mentioned on the metal part. That also has to happen on the module plate as well. They'd never done that before. Then we told them how we wanted them to fix the part into the car with these same fixings that you've seen on the instrument panel and the floor console. So we told them how we wanted them to fix it into the car. So something, again, that they're normally used to having as a conversation. And then finally, the sad truth about module plates is that because they're hidden normally, they're made of a technical material that isn't really A-surface acceptable. It doesn't have the right tactile quality. So we then had to have a conversation about the tactile quality of module plates with module plate engineers that have never even heard of tactile quality as a subject. And the only way to get through that, in fact, and maintain the technical performance of the part was to wrap it. And that's the first time we've ever wrapped a module plate ever in production. So a really unique piece of design that had to go all the way through the depth of engineering and design in the company and then back out to the final finished product. So a really satisfying piece of work for everybody. So I'm just going to walk over to another one of our models. This is a model of the final production condition of the car. So it's like an evolution of the model that Nick talked about earlier. And I just want to point, we've been through the front of the car, the middle of the car, and here's the back of the car. Here's the load space, or the trunk area. Now this is an area of the car it would have been very easy for us to have done the simple thing. A couple of mouldings, one either side, do a simple job. But you don't get to replace an icon very often, and even if other people would have been satisfied with that, we would not have been. So what we had to do was think a bit laterally. So the first thing we did was try and develop the simplest set of surfaces possible. So we pushed all the load space outboard so it was just a simple offset of the body structure. That's great, provides a really simple environment for the load space. It gives us a problem. In every modern car, there's an awful lot of componentry that gets packaged in the back of the car. So, for example, this is, again, a 7-seat 110, just like the ACM you saw earlier. And you can see that it's, because it has a third row of seats, it needs a climate pack for those third row occupants. So where do you fit the climate pack if you've pushed all the surfaces outboard? Well, we just thought laterally, if you've got a thing, stick it in the box and stick it on the side of those surfaces. So we came up with the idea of these panniers or boxes. So again, another really honest piece of thinking in terms of how you package and design the car. So just by opening the tailgate on a Defender, you can actually tell a lot of the specification of the car just simply by looking. So you also get a really good view with this model of the floor of the car. Now remember, we'd set ourselves the challenge of it being a sort of hose-out, highly durable material. When it came to production, we've never really done that in modern times. So that was a series of quite interesting conversations. But it was very, very important to us that we kept that element of the car. So that's when we needed to have some really serious materiality conversations with the engineering group.
So Martin, you mentioned materiality, and you're starting to touch on some of the grain development in the interior of this vehicle. I could wax lyrical about grain all day. We have grain on the module plate, technical grain, also on the upper instrument panel here, which are difficult to deliver into the tooling systems themselves because they're ordered rather than random and organic. We also have the entire floor system is grained with different grains and the load space that Martin just talked to you about. You see the checker plate graphic showing itself again on the grain here on the elements of the floor and the load space. You know, the scrutiny of if the grains were going to pass all of our tests in terms of scratch and mar, soiling, performance. We did a lot of investigation on grains. You can imagine taking just the elements of the checker plate graphic. You're looking at what's happening on the tops of the valleys of those stripe elements, and in the valley of those components, thinking about all the different grain structures that are going to have the most retained newness for these components. It was very challenging. to ensure that we designed and developed things that looked aesthetically correct for Defender, but also performed in terms of grains. Because you don't normally think about how much time and effort goes into designing the grain structures that go into these injection mold tooling systems. Another part of tactility, materiality, as we like to call many of our material development initiatives, one that is really close to my heart is the Kvadrat partnership that Land Rover have established since 2017 on Velar. So obviously, to do justice for Defender, we wanted to create an all-new weave structure, wool blend textile with Kvadrat. Here is what we've developed for Defender. It's called Steel Cut, and it's a weave consisting of 3 yarns coming together to create one thread that then gets woven together. So it's very robust, very Defender. It's 30% wool, has this raw wool tactility that was really important for us to capture, thinking about the spirit of Defender. Also, you see here that juxtaposition of materials coming together was very important for Defender. So you see the steel cut placed purposefully on areas of high wear on the seats and the cushion combined with leather. But we also have the Kvadrat steel cut combined with a microfiber suede textile to create our materiality offering, which is a completely non-leather interior. The Kvadrat, I think I said before, is made with 30% wool, 70% polyester. The Miko is made with recycled plastic content. The recycled plastic content comes from post-consumer waste, plastic bottles, things like this. That's something that's really important for our strategy with material developments moving forward to ensure that we always have conscious choices offered for our customers, thinking all about more sustainable and more responsible solutions with the materials that we design and develop. In addition to the Kvadrat steel cut, we also developed a new technical textile for the mid-range trim levels. This is called the Defend textile. And again, thinking about the juxtaposition of materials coming together, this is used on kind of the U-shaped area of the cushion and the swab with another grade of leather to kind of create a cosseting effect with the seats. There's a lot of hard surfaces in the Defender interior from the flooring and all the metals. So where we were putting soft materials was really important for us to make sure we had the right blend of things coming together. It creates more of an architectural feeling to do that rather than just have everything clad in one material. Bringing kind of a home or architectural environment into our vehicle interiors at Land Rover is a wider strategy. So figuring out how that was going to be appropriate for Defender, this is what we've developed and delivered.
Thank you. I mean, really cool stories about the textile.
Yeah.
Thanks. But Defender is also very much about being individual and, having the possibility of spec and create your own Defender. And that's where the whole idea of, Sean, how many accessories?
We've got 170 accessories.
170 accessories. And I'm not going to go through them. I'm going to let Sean tell you about, not all of them, just a few key ones.
A few key ones.
Thanks,
yeah.
Sean.
So as Massimo said, an enormous array of accessories that we've designed for this vehicle, and it really helps to promote and communicate the ability to personalise your vehicle. So all of the accessories that we've designed are actually been designed alongside the core car at the same time. This is actually a very, very early model, which we had built specifically to place the accessory designs on. So let's just go through a few of them. The first one is the side pannier here on the side of the car. It's a lockable carry unit, very robust and strong. But the important thing is that how we've chosen to fix it to the vehicle. Obviously, an enormous amount of work has been done with the core design team to ensure that it's got fixing points built into the design of the car, so it's integral. But it also then doubles up for the fixing points for the ladder, which I'll talk about in a minute. Just moving along the side of the car, we can see here the side steps of the vehicle. Very much inspired by the heritage of a previous Defender where we had individual steps. A very clever design that actually allows us to use the same step, both front and rear, but also on the 90. We were able to carry it over on that car as well and on both sides. So moving around to the other side of the car here, you'll see the raised air intake, not to be confused with the snorkel, which breathes through water. The raised air intake is for clean air. Worth noting on here that there's a couple of very, very difficult tasks to achieve, is both the internal vision looking out, but also what they call the throat of the air intake, which allows for the volume of air to pass through to actually allow the engine to breathe.
Sean, sorry, it is opposite to what a lot of people think. It's not for the water, right?
That's right, it's not for the water, no, because of course we've got such a high wading depth on the car. So you can see here, just by adding in like the caps on the top and the premium feel of the gloss black here, it just elevates the perception value of that component, and it's really integrated and designed well to fit with the flowing lines of the car. So finally here, I'm just going to touch on the ladder, my personal favourite. It's a very neat design. In fact, if I just demonstrate on this model here, the way it opens out here. This is a ladder that can take 185 kilos of weight, which is massive. The ability to be able to have a full-grown adult carry everything they need to carry up to the lightweight roof structure there is fantastic. And of course, a lot of people asked us, why didn't we put this on the back of the car? And it's purely because the rear door carries an enormous amount of weight with the spare, and any other place is blocked by the legals for light clearance. So this was the perfect area to get you right into the middle zone of your roof carrying. So with all these accessories available to the customer, we had to think about how we're going to put them all together. So we came up with these 4 packs. We're talking about the urban pack here, the explorer pack, a country pack, and adventure pack. Something that the design team actually worked very closely with marketing on to help pull together the key focused accessories, put them together and group them so it makes the customer choice really easy for them to choose. Okay, so
yeah, that's great, Sean. I think that's important. Again, it shows how design is involved in curating those packs. You know,
yeah, we were heavily involved in that. Yeah.
Absolutely. So this really, summarize 6 years, maybe longer, of a journey for the new Defender in just about half an hour, 30 minutes. I hope we've been able to give you, a glimpse and flavor of what's been for us this incredible journey. And before we go to, the Q&A at the end, I just want to leave with a very short video that really represents 2 very touching moments for us. And I don't want to say too much. We'll just play the videos and you'll see for yourself. Thank you.
Longevity and durability of interior materials.
Right, so we have lots of testing that we do on all materials at Land Rover. In fact, our tests for materials are some of the most challenging in the industry. One that comes to mind specifically for some of the new technical textiles that we talked about is a snag test where we use literally a medieval torture device, the mace. So if you know what a mace is, it's basically a round sphere, and it's got these little sharp spikes on this thing that's connected to a stick, and it is literally going onto the material like this, and it's running at a rate. I don't know how long it runs, but our textiles, for example, need to pass the snag test using a mace. So that gives you an indication of how challenging they can be. That's the first one that comes to mind, the snag test. What about you, Nicola?
Probably all the soiling tests that have to happen. So we test grease, we test oil, ketchup, dirt, sun cream, anything you could spill onto a material. We have to prove that it wipes off and looks as new as it did when the car was bought, really. Yeah. And then there's the tear strength test as well. That's quite tough. And I think we've developed a material that's better than leather. Do you know the numbers?
The steel cut.
Yeah.
Has 5 times greater tensile tear strength than leather. So for Defender, these were attributes that we knew that we had to try to surpass some of our most challenging specifications. So I think we have lots of examples where we have over-delivered, and I think our team's proud about that.
What would you say is the most challenging accessory to design and deliver?
I think the ladder, I would say, was probably the most challenging. We spent a long time figuring out where to put it on the car, which was both, a legal position. It met all of the pedestrian head impact zone considerations. But the most challenging element was actually working with the core design team and finding a way of fixing it to the car robustly. And the little collar element of the design of the car on the side actually houses the fixings. That's something that actually had to be designed in right from the beginning. So it was a very integrated process of working with both the core design team and all of the engineers to ensure that that fixing methodology was baked in. But then, of course, we had to do all the testing, so building prototypes, climbing up and down. We actually fitted it to the side of a Range Rover, a current Range Rover, and we're jumping up and down on it just to see if we could break the early prototypes. And then, of course, the big message about the materials that we use for that ladder had to be very robust, real metal elements, but we couldn't cloud the outside in metal for many legal reasons. And weight, so a very challenging process to get that to work. And the guy who designed it actually was came from a product design background, so that his head worked in a very different way to a lot of traditional automotive designers.
And what was the biggest challenge you faced when designing the Defender interior?
Martin.
So we've talked quite a bit about Defender having a lot of different configurations, being able to alter the car to suit what you want as a user. So we had to design that in from the beginning. And probably the most challenging area of the interior for me to support that was the centre of row 1. So we've got a low-line console, we've got a high-line console, and we've got a jump seat. And that combination is pretty unique, I think, anywhere in the industry. It's quite, maybe occasionally we do 2 consoles, pretty rare, but occasionally. To do 2 consoles and a jump seat with the same instrument panel and the same floor, that was really technically extremely difficult, especially as the jump seat also folds over and forms a kind of limited form of console itself. So in itself, it's a challenging piece of design. And the package area for that is so tight that in the end, the only way to make it work properly was we had to go right into the engineering, the heater box and the ducting out of the heater box into the centre vents. We actually had to surface those air ducts in order to get the package we needed for the jump seat and still get the air performance. So it was almost like doing a little bit of Formula One kind of aerodynamics in that very limited area just to get the package we needed. We've never done that before. That's the first time we've ever surfaced an air duct in order to get the package right, to get the design right. So that area really very challenging indeed for me.
How do you balance the off-road capability requirement with on-road luxury?
How do you balance it? Well, I think you have to approach the design of the vehicle from a holistic point of view. So again, you have to deal with some of the engineering requirement in order to get that off-road capabilities. Then you work closely with the interior, color material in order to deliver that level of refinement that it's needed today even for a car like this. So the only way to deliver something that can actually behave so well in both scenarios, you just need to approach the project very collaboratively and in a very holistic way.